I woke up at 4 a.m. in a parking lot with a stranger's hand reaching across my lap, and that wasn't even the part that haunts me. My name is Luca. I'm 23, living alone in a small apartment just outside Antwerp, Belgium. What I'm about to tell you happened in September 2024, and even now, months later, I catch myself checking the locks twice before I close my eyes. I've always been nocturnal. My body doesn't wind down until well past midnight, and most nights you'll find me glued to my PC, headphones on, deep in some game or rabbit hole until the early hours. That particular night was no different. By 3 a.m., I was still wide awake, clicking through menus, when a hunger hit me. Not the casual kind you can ignore with a glass of water, but the deep, gnawing, almost painful kind that hijacks your entire brain. The kind where your body tells you nothing else is happening until you feed me. I padded downstairs to the kitchen, opened the fridge. Nearly empty, a half-squeezed bottle of ketchup and some expired yogurt. The cabinets offered even less. A box of stale crackers, a single bouillon cube, and so, like an idiot, I made a decision that would change the way I think about safety for the rest of my life. There's a McDonald's in central Brussels that never closes, a 24-hour location that caters to night shift workers, taxi drivers, and people like me, restless insomniacs with empty refrigerators and poor judgment. I grabbed my keys, climbed into my beat-up 2006 Toyota Yaris, and drove. The city at that hour exists in a strange liminal state. Traffic lights cycle through their colors for nobody. Storefronts stare out through darkened glass. The occasional taxi drifts past like a ghost. Brussels at 3 a.m. isn't hostile, it's hollow. A city pretending to sleep while something underneath stays wide awake. I parked in the McDonald's lot, went inside, ordered more food than I needed, and carried the bag back to my car. Normally I eat at home, always. It's a routine I never break, but the hunger was too immediate, too demanding, and I told myself I'd just eat quickly in the driver's seat and head back. I mounted my phone on the dashboard holder, pulled up a YouTube video, unwrapped my burger, and settled in. For a few minutes, everything was fine, normal, almost pleasant in that strange way eating alone at 3:30 a.m. in an empty parking lot can feel oddly peaceful, like you've stepped outside of time and the world has forgotten you exist. I finished eating, balled up the wrappers, dropped them back in the bag, and that's when the exhaustion arrived. It didn't creep in. It crashed. 1 second I was alert, and the next my eyelids were made of concrete. The warm car, the full stomach, the late hour, it all conspired against me at once. I told myself I'd close my eyes for just a moment, 2 minutes, maybe 5, just enough to gather the energy for the drive home. I was unconscious within seconds. I don't know how long I was out, 20 minutes, maybe 30, but I know exactly what woke me up. It was the sound of my passenger door opening, not the handle being tried, not a knock on the window. The door was opening, the interior light flickering on, the cool night air rushing in, the mechanical click of the latch releasing. My brain surfaced from sleep in fragments. First came confusion. A vague awareness that something was wrong, that the geometry of my environment had shifted. Then came the visual, a shape, a person, a man already halfway into the passenger seat. He was older, weathered face, layers of dirty clothing, a wool cap pulled low. The smell hit me next, stale sweat, damp fabric, something sour and organic underneath. He wasn't aggressive, he wasn't frantic. He was calm, eerily calm, as if climbing into a stranger's car at 4 a.m. was something he did every night. He looked directly at me and asked for food, not demanded, asked, quietly, almost politely, as if this were a perfectly normal interaction between two people who knew each other. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. Every nerve in my body had gone electric. I was exposed, seatbelt still on, doors unlocked, body still heavy with sleep, brain still trying to assemble the pieces of where I was and what was happening. "I don't have anything left," I managed. My voice came out thin and hoarse. "Sorry, it's all gone." He didn't respond right away. He just sat there, looking at me, then at the crumpled McDonald's bag between us. Without a word, he reached for it and began methodically going through the contents, unfolding wrappers, checking the bottoms of containers, searching for a stray fry or a nugget I might have missed. His hands moved slowly, deliberately, as though he had all the time in the world. Those seconds stretched into something elastic and unbearable. I couldn't read him. I didn't know if he was desperate or dangerous or both. I didn't know if there was a knife somewhere inside those layers of clothing. I didn't know what would happen if he decided the empty bag wasn't sufficient. I kept my voice as steady as I could. Listen, I'm going to head out now. I need to go. He didn't acknowledge me. I reached for my phone on the dashboard mount, slowly, carefully, intending to clip it back onto the holder and pull up my GPS for the drive home. The instant my fingers touched the phone, his hand shot out and ripped it from the mount. He was out of the car and running before my brain even registered the absence of the phone from my grip. One fluid motion, grab, pivot, sprint, executed with a speed and precision that seemed completely at odds with everything about him. The passenger door swung wide and bounced on its hinges as he vanished into the dark. For one paralyzed second, I sat there staring at my empty hand. Then the adrenaline detonated. I threw my door open and ran after him, screaming into the empty street. "Stop! Help! He took my phone!" My voice echoing off shuttered buildings and parked cars. The sidewalk was empty. The man had dissolved into Brussels like ink into dark water. I stopped running, bent over, hands on my knees, gasping. The street was silent except for my own ragged breathing and the distant hum of the city's mechanical pulse, ventilation systems, a far-off siren, the electrical buzz of a street lamp above me. Then the anger arrived. It didn't build gradually. It ignited, sudden, white-hot, and total. I'd been violated. Someone had entered my space, my car, while I was unconscious, had sat inches from me while I slept, and had taken something from my hands. The vulnerability of it was almost worse than the theft. What else could have happened while I was asleep? How long had he been standing outside my window before he tried the handle? Had he watched me fall asleep? I got back in the car and started driving, aimlessly, aggressively, circling blocks, scanning sidewalks, peering into alleyways and doorways with a frantic, unfocused intensity. My hands were trembling on the wheel. I kept imagining what I would do if I found him, and every scenario that played out in my head frightened me, not because of what he might do, but because of what I might do. I was running on rage and adrenaline, two forces that make spectacularly bad decisions when left unsupervised. That's when someone stepped off the curb and flagged me down. He was maybe mid-30s, medium build. Dark jacket, glasses, a calm expression that seemed almost out of place given the hour and circumstances. He leaned toward my open window and said, in measured French-accented English, that he lived in the apartment building directly above where my car had been parked. He'd been awake, couldn't sleep, and had watched the entire thing unfold from his third-floor window. His name was Mark, a complete stranger, at 4 a.m. In central Brussels. This man had watched a crime happen to someone he'd never met, gotten dressed, come downstairs, and walked into the street to help. "Get in," I said, not even questioning it. The night had already passed beyond the borders of normal. He climbed into the passenger seat, the same seat the other man had occupied minutes earlier, and we began driving together in slow loops through the surrounding streets. Two strangers in a dented Toyota, scanning the shadows for a ghost. We found nothing. After 20 minutes of fruitless searching, Mark asked me a question that rearranged everything. "Can you track it? Your phone. Does it have location services?" The realization hit me like cold water. Yes, it did. And more importantly, I always left my mobile data on, a habit born of laziness that had just become the most important decision I'd ever passively made. The phone was still on, still connected, still broadcasting its location to anyone who knew where to look. We drove to Mark's apartment. He led me upstairs, sat me down at his desk, and opened his laptop. I logged into the tracking platform with shaking hands, entered my credentials, waited for the map to load, and there it was, a small blue dot pulsing gently on the screen, less than a kilometer from where we sat. We were back in the car within 60 seconds. The location led us to a narrow side street flanked by boarded-up storefronts and overflowing dumpsters. It was the kind of street that exists in every European city, forgotten, unlit, claimed by those the city would rather not see. Mark killed the headlights as we rolled to a stop. In the dim orange glow of a distant street lamp, I could make out two figures lying on flattened cardboard on the pavement, bundled in sleeping bags and layers of clothing. Every molecule in my body wanted to charge out of the car and tear through their belongings. Mark put his hand on my arm. "Wait," he said quietly. "Use the app." I opened the tracking app and triggered the remote ring function. Then we turned off the engine and sat in the silence. For 5 seconds, nothing. The street was dead still. Then, faint, muffled, but unmistakable, a ringtone. My ringtone? Coming from somewhere beneath the pile of fabric and cardboard near the closest figure, I got out of the car slowly, walked toward the sound. My heart was beating so violently, I could hear the blood rushing in my own ears. The figure on the ground didn't stir. The ringtone continued its cheerful, absurd melody. A sound designed for mundane moments, now playing in a scene that felt like the edge of something violent. I found it wedged beneath a folded jacket, screen still glowing. I picked it up. The relief that flooded through me was so powerful, my knees almost buckled. I walked back to the car. Mark was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, watching me with the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd seen a problem through to its end. We drove back to his apartment. I thanked him, over and over, clumsily, in a way that couldn't possibly convey what he'd done. He'd given me over 2 hours of his night. He'd helped a stranger recover something that meant nothing to him. He'd kept me calm, when calm was the last thing I was capable of. He shook my hand, told me to drive safe, and went back upstairs. I sat in my car outside his building for a long time before I finally drove home. People asked me what the scariest part was. They expect me to say the theft, the chase, the dark streets, the confrontation. It wasn't any of those things. The scariest part was waking up. The scariest part was opening my eyes and realizing that a stranger was already inside my car. That he had opened the door, sat down, and settled in beside me while I was completely unconscious. That for some unknowable number of seconds or minutes, another human being had been sitting 12 inches from my sleeping body, and I have felt nothing. Known nothing. Been as defenseless as a person can be. Since that night, my doors are always locked. Always. Even when I'm awake, even when I'm driving, even when I'm parked in my own driveway in broad daylight. I don't fall asleep in my car anymore. But here's the thing that actually keeps me up at night. The detail I haven't been able to stop thinking about. The one that sits in the back of my skull like a splinter I can't reach. When I found my phone under that jacket and picked it up, the screen was unlocked. Someone had been going through it. My photos, my messages, my home address pulled up in the GPS history. He knows where I live. And every night since, right around 4 a.m., I hear a car door handle, just once, just barely, testing whether it's locked. I'm still in high school. I also work weekends for my uncle at a local college stadium, running a concession stand during games and events. It's maybe once or twice a month, decent money for a kid my age, and the work isn't hard. The stadium sits on the far edge of town, surrounded by empty lots and farmland that stretches out into nothing. During events, it's packed. 5,000 people, easy. But after hours, when the crowds drain out and the lot lights shut off, that side of town becomes a different place entirely. This happened on a Friday night in late January. I come straight from school to the stadium, worked a half shift, about 4 hours, and was packing up when my uncle pulled me aside. We needed more heavy-duty spoons for tomorrow's event. We sell ice cream by the hundreds, and we were completely out. Grab some on your way home, he said. Save me a trip in the morning. Simple enough. Except the only store that carries the industrial-sized spoons we use is all the way across town. And I still had plans to meet up with a few buddies afterward to hang out and blow off steam after a long week. So instead of taking the main roads through the center of town, slower, well-lit, populated, I decided to loop around the outskirts, the back way, the fast way, the sketchy way. We'd gotten snow the night before. Not a blizzard, but enough to coat everything in a few inches of white that nobody had bothered to plow on the outer roads. I wasn't worried. I drive a full-size pickup, and I'd driven in worse. The truck could handle it. The first 5 minutes were uneventful. Empty road, empty fields, the kind of flat, featureless landscape that makes you feel like you're driving through a photograph rather than a real place. No cars, no buildings with lights on. Just the sound of my tires crunching through packed snow and the low hum of the heater. It was pushing 9 p.m., and the temperature had dropped to around 10 degrees. Nobody takes this route unless they absolutely have to. I was on the phone with my mom, hands-free, speaker, just checking in, telling her I'd be home late. Mid-sentence, something caught the edge of my peripheral vision on the left side of the road. A man, walking in the ditch. He was maybe 5'9", average build, and he was wearing shorts, a t-shirt, a baseball cap turned backwards, in 10-degree weather, in the snow, walking along the drainage ditch like it was a sunny afternoon in July. My foot instinctively drifted toward the brake. My first impulse was to pull over, because something was obviously very wrong with this person. Hypothermia, drugs, a breakdown of some kind. No sane human being walks through a frozen ditch in summer clothes at 9 o'clock at night on a deserted road. My mom heard me hesitate. "Don't stop," she said immediately. Her voice had changed, sharpened. She reminded me about things that had happened in our town before. A college student, a girl, had been kidnapped a few years back. Found dead, rolled up in a carpet, dumped in a field. 2015. The case was all over the local news for months. "Keep driving," she said. "Call someone if you want, but don't you dare pull over." I didn't stop. Something in my gut agreed with her before my brain could form a reason. I told myself it was nothing, maybe some drunk kid who'd wandered out of a party. I was a big guy in a big truck. Not exactly a prime target. I passed him doing about 40, which was all the road conditions would safely allow, and watched him shrink in my rearview mirror. Then, not even 500 feet past him, a car appeared. It didn't approach from another road. It didn't come from behind me. It materialized. Headlights snapping on in a field entrance off the right side of the road, pulling onto the pavement directly behind me. There was no driveway there, no side road. I found that out later when I checked on Google Maps. Just a dirt turnoff into an empty agricultural field, a place where a car could sit in the darkness with its lights off and wait. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe they'd been parked there for a reason, maybe it was a coincidence. But the hairs on the back of my neck were standing at full attention, and my mom's voice was still in my ear telling me to be careful. As I approached the edge of town and started hitting intersections, I needed to make a series of turns to reach the store. Left turn. The car turned left, right turn. The car turned right. I hit a roundabout and, on impulse, skipped my exit, circled the entire thing twice. The road was empty. There was no reason for anyone else to do the same. The car followed me around, twice, maintaining the same distance, never closing in, never falling back. My hands tightened on the wheel. I was talking to myself now, running through rationalizations. Maybe they're going to the same store. Maybe it's just the same route. Maybe you're being paranoid. But the rational part of my brain was losing ground fast. I approached a stop sign in a rougher part of town. Made my turn without signaling, deliberately, as a test. The car followed without hesitation. Didn't even pretend to pause. I know. I should have driven straight to the police station. I've seen enough crime documentaries and read enough stories online to understand that. But in the moment, you don't think like that. You think I'm 2 miles from the store. There will be people there. I'll be fine. You tell yourself you're overreacting because the alternative is too frightening to accept while you're alone in a vehicle on a dark road. I blew through a stop sign at an empty intersection without slowing down. In my mirror, I watched the car make a quick rolling stop and accelerate to close the gap. 2 more turns. I pulled into the store parking lot. The car turned in behind me. The store shared a lot with a gas station, so I pulled up to a pump first, acting casual, like I was just getting fuel. The car didn't follow me to the pumps. Instead, it drifted to the side of the road in the gap between the gas station and the store entrance and just stopped. Engine running, lights on, sitting. I sat at the pump for 10 minutes, didn't get gas, just watched. The car didn't move, didn't leave, didn't pull into a parking spot. It just idled there, like a predator settling into position. My mouth had gone dry. I pulled out my phone and called my buddy Marcus, one of the guys I was supposed to meet up with later. Tried to keep my voice steady. Gave him the license plate number and the make and color of the car. "Just in case," I said, and the weight of those 3 words sat between us like something physical. I drove across the street to the store lot. The car followed. I found a spot near the entrance. The car parked 3 rows back and a few spaces over, close enough to watch, far enough to seem casual to anyone who wasn't paying attention. The lot was nearly empty. A few scattered cars. The store was closing soon. I was running out of time. I turned my truck back on, drove to the complete opposite end of the parking lot, threw it in park, and sprinted for the entrance. I'm 6'1", about 200 pounds. Not exactly built for speed, but fear is a remarkable motivator. I was through the automatic doors in seconds, breathing hard, heart slamming against my ribs. Inside, the fluorescent lights and the mundane normalcy of retail felt like a different universe. I found the spoons, grabbed them, took my time in the aisles, trying to let my pulse come down, trying to think clearly about what to do next. I reached for my phone to call Marcus again. Dead. Completely dead. The battery had drained to zero. A cold wave of helplessness washed through me. No phone. No way to call for help. No way to reach my friends, my mom, the police. I was a teenager with a bag of plastic spoons and no lifeline. I walked toward the front of the store and looked out through the sliding glass doors. There was a white van parked directly next to my truck. Driver's side. So close that I wouldn't be able to open my door without touching it. It hadn't been there before. The engine was running. The front seats appeared empty. The rear windows were covered, blacked out with something from the inside. Tape or fabric or paint, I couldn't tell. The exhaust plumed white in the freezing air. It sat there rumbling like something alive, waiting. My stomach dropped into my shoes. I turned around and walked as fast as I could to the customer service desk. Explained everything. The car, the man in the ditch, the van, the following. The woman behind the counter looked at me the way adults look at teenagers who are being dramatic. Nodded politely. Did nothing. Probably thought I was pulling some kind of prank or looking for attention. I stood inside that store and watched through the Starbucks window near the front entrance. I wasn't leaving. Not with that van sitting there. I didn't care if they had to drag me out at closing time. After about 30 minutes, the longest 30 minutes of my life, the van pulled forward, slowly, rolled through the lot toward the far exit. And as it did, the original car reappeared from behind the building. It had been parked on the side of the store, out of sight the entire time. The van stopped. The car pulled alongside it. Through the Starbucks glass, I watched them idle next to each other for 15, maybe 20 seconds, long enough for a conversation through open windows. Then both vehicles pulled out of the lot and disappeared down the road in the same direction. I waited another 10 minutes, scanned the lot, scanned the road, nothing. I walked to my truck as fast as I could without running, climbed in, locked the doors, and drove straight to Marcus's house. Didn't stop at a single sign, didn't check my mirrors. Just drove. When I pulled into his driveway, I parked inside his garage. The door came down behind me, and I sat there for a full minute with my forehead against the steering wheel before I went inside. Marcus and 2 other friends were waiting up. I told them everything. One of them, Dylan, went out to the garage to look at the truck. He came back in with a strange look on his face. "Hey man, why is there an orange mark on your tire?" The room went quiet. I went out to look. There it was. A bright fluorescent orange streak, like a paint marker or a grease crayon, swiped deliberately across the sidewall of my rear passenger tire. I hadn't put it there, and hadn't been there when I left the stadium. Someone had marked my truck while I was inside the store. We looked at each other. Then Marcus said, "Check the bed." I grabbed a flashlight and aimed it into the truck bed. Snow had accumulated during the drive, a thin layer of white covering the rubber mat. But sitting in the middle of the bed, surrounded by undisturbed snow, meaning it had been placed there recently, carefully, while the truck was parked, was a pipe. About 2 inches in diameter, maybe 18 inches long, wrapped in silver duct tape. It was not mine. I have never owned anything that looks like that. It had not been in my truck when I left the stadium, and it had not been there when I left my uncle's lot. Someone had walked up to my vehicle while I was inside that store, marked my tire, and placed a weapon in my truck bed. We called the police. They took a report, took the pipe, said they'd look into the plate number I'd given Marcus. I never heard back. That was 3 weeks ago. I've driven past that stretch of outskirts road twice since then, both times in daylight, both times with someone else in the truck. There's no road where that car pulled out, just a flat, empty field with a gap in the fence where farm equipment enters. A perfect place to park a car in the dark and wait. I've thought about that man in the ditch every single night since. The shorts, the t-shirt, the backward hat, 10 degrees, walking through the snow like he didn't feel it. And I keep coming back to one question that I can't answer and can't stop asking. Was he the bait? Because here's the thing. If I had pulled over to help him the way my first instinct told me to, I would have been standing outside my truck, alone, on a deserted road in the dark, with a car sitting in that field entrance 500 feet ahead of me. A car I never would have seen until it was too late. I used to think that being a big guy in a big truck made me untouchable, that predators pick easy targets and I didn't look like one. I don't think that anymore. I keep the doors locked now. I keep my phone charged. I don't take the back roads after dark. But what I can't stop thinking about, what keeps me staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. while everyone else in the house is asleep, is the orange mark. I've looked it up. I've read the forums. I've seen what people say about tire marking. It means they're coming back for you, and my truck still sits in the same driveway every night,